Hello and welcome to History. Oh, lovely. My name's Ben. I'm part of a reenacting society called Historia Normannis. A lot of people locally to Lewes will know us as the Lewes Medieval Society. And like many people right now, I am self-isolating for the good of the nation. And I am looking for ways to pass the time, and for me, the best way to pass the time is to get stuck into some history. About 15 years ago, I moved to a small town in Sussex called Lewes. Not a lot of people will have known about it or have heard of it, but basically this small town in Lewes was the site of potentially one of the most important battles in the history of England, and this is the Battle of Lewes. It's part of the Second Baronial War, Second Barons' War. This happened in 1264, the battle itself. It's extremely important because the result of the battle was that for the first time in England, an element of democracy was introduced into the government system or the governing of the nation. So to me, the Battle of Lewes is quite a big deal. When I arrived in Lewes 15 years ago, I had never heard of the Battle of Lewes, never heard of the Second Barons' War. And so to find out that I lived in a place where such a massive thing happened was really exciting for me. Ever since I've taken an interest, and I thought, seeing as I'm stuck indoors, maybe I'll do a bit of a video and we can learn something about the Battle of Lewes together. Let's start laying the groundwork and looking at the origins and the causes of the Second Barons' War and the Battle of Lewes. I think we'll start off by introducing the two main protagonists in this story. We'll start with King Henry III. Here he is, represented by Master Chief. Henry III, King of England. He came of age during what was an ongoing difficult time in this country. He was age 9 when he became king. This was during the First Barons' War. His protector was William Marshal, the original William Marshal. And William Marshal, not long after Henry became king, won the Battle of Lincoln, and Henry III seemed to be heading in the right direction. Obviously, his father, King John, had a really rough time. Obviously, we have the introduction of the Magna Carta. When Henry III started his rule, he seemed inclined to uphold the Magna Carta, but sadly that didn't work out. He went in the absolute opposite direction. It was just downhill, and it was always fated, I would say, to end in a second conflict with the nobles of England. We'll now introduce our second protagonist. Enter stage left, Simon de Montfort. This is actually Simon. I got bought this by a good friend a while ago. He's got his own little chainmail, which is absolutely brilliant, and so I thought, who better to present Simon than Simon himself in his wicked chainmail. Give him a wave. Lovely. So you're going to sit there right next to Henry III. They originally got on relatively well, but they had a big falling out, and this is probably part of the reason why they ended up being directly opposed to each other in this conflict. So Simon de Montfort here, French-born noble, came from a relatively wealthy family, quite well-to-do. I know that his parents took part in the Albigensian Crusades, which he was also present at, and then started taking part in about the 1220s, so he was experienced in warfare. He also went and took part in the Barons' Crusade, so he was experienced in conflict, so we can say that much. He arrived in England in 1229. Upon arrival, managed to convince Henry III to give him vacant earldom, so he managed to get himself into a nice spot there. After that, there was a bit of scandal. First note of scandal. He married Eleanor of England. The trouble with this was, firstly, it's considered quite a big marriage, Henry III's sister. And what he didn't do was he didn't consult the other barons. And this is not appropriate in them days. If you were going to have a big, grand union like this, you would consult them, at least the major barons, and involve them in this decision-making process. But they went ahead and did it without considering anyone. And at the time, Simon here was still considered not a great noble. He wasn't a man of great power. He was a bit mean for Eleanor, who was obviously way up there. So that didn't go down well. There's a bit of scandal with that. The next one, which is the one that really caused these two to fall out and come to blows, was Simon here ended up owing quite a lot of money to a gentleman called Thomas II of Savoy. And the reason this is bad was because Simon had put Henry's name down as security. So when Simon failed to pay back the money, Thomas II of Savoy went straight to Henry, and Henry had no clue. He wasn't happy about it, and they had a big falling out about it. There was confrontations, but this is what sets the seeds for these two not getting on anymore. Okay, so we've got King here who is totally mismanaging his country, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then we've got Simon here, who's got a thirst for power. He's crusaded around the world, and he will soon be up and coming. Thanks everyone for watching the first episode. If you enjoyed it, please like and share. Keep an eye out for episode 2, which will be the causes of the battle, and then finally after that, you get the actual battle itself.